Avengers Secret Wars is set to be a huge movie coming out in a few years, and I want to discuss Avengers Secret Wars. We did a video a few weeks ago discussing the road to Secret Wars, but I want to actually dive into Secret Wars, not just the comic storyline, but also how it relates to what the MCU is going to do. There's going to be a lot of videos on YouTube that will go into detail about the entire comic book storyline, why it's important, what actually happened. We're going to be discussing that a little bit here. But really what I want to do is kind of lay the groundwork for what they might be doing in the film, how they're going to build up to it, and what they're going to give us in the actual movie in relation to the original story. So first of all, I want to introduce my guest here on the Geekdom Movie Talk podcast. Please welcome back. He's been here before talking about Marvel. Hayden Walsh, what's up, man?
Hey, Danny. Nothing. Just glad to be back talking MCU once again.
Yes, indeed. Now, we did the road to Secret Wars, and we talked a little bit about the Jonathan Hickman event, but I want to go back even further. So, Secret Wars originally was a comic book storyline that took a year to produce, came out back in '84, literally the year that I was born. It was a one-year storyline that essentially was a huge crossover between some of Marvel's biggest titles at the time, featuring multiple superheroes, multiple villains fighting together and against each other in a battle royal type of situation in this world called Battle World. That they were sent there by this being known as the Beyonder, who's the cosmic, god type of being. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading that the Secret War storyline that was developed back in the 80s was specifically done to sell toys, right?
Yes, that's right. It was a big crossover written by then editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, specifically to launch the new toy line that they just created.
Yeah, and, it featured some of the bigger characters in Marvel. Not only is Spider-Man in here, you had the Avengers, Fantastic Four, the X-Men. You had villains in here like Doc Ock, Doctor Doom, Kang the Conqueror. Of course, we'll talk about him here in a minute. Ultron, and many others. Even Galactus appeared in this Secret Wars story. I think probably the most famous thing to come out of Secret Wars is Spider-Man finding the symbiote that would lead to the black costume, because if it wasn't for that, we would never have Venom, Carnage, and a lot of the big late 80s, early 90s storylines. Venom became a huge character because of this, but it all started here with Secret Wars. What I wanted to talk to you about is that was the original 80s Secret Wars. Now, they revisited this in 2015. Jonathan Hickman did his own version of it, which was this done just basically like in 2015, not only the anniversary, because Secret Wars ended in 85, but was it done to kind of take that idea and bring it to a modern audience?
Yeah, it's very much a kind of a update or a cinematic, reimagining of the original Secret Wars storyline. It channels it in a lot of ways. It has similar plot beats. A lot of the characters are the same, and it goes in a similar direction. It involves the Beyonders, things like that. But it is very much a facelift for the original story to make it a bit more cinematic and a bit less obviously toyetic. Made to sell toys by just mashing up all the best characters together and having them interact and fight on just basically a somewhat generic alien gladiator world, like Planet Hulk style thing. And the 2015 one is what you would say is kind of a modern take on the story. But it is also the culmination of Jonathan Hickman's multi-year Avengers run, which even channels his previous Fantastic Four run, which even took inspiration from his run on Secret Warriors, and even his run on the Ultimates in the Ultimate Universe, where he created some characters like Reed Richards, the Maker, and stuff. So it's much like the event, combining all the alternate realities into one world. It pulls from all of his stories into one really great denouement for all of his arcs, which really climaxes in Avengers Secret Wars. And it is, I believe, one of the best Marvel events ever written.
Yeah, I know that the 2015 Secret Wars, and I'm not too familiar with it, but I know it was built up better. The one from the 80s seemed like, somewhat, not out of nowhere, but, it was just kind of a gimmick. But with the new Secret Wars, you have the idea of the incursions. You have, a lot of different alternate universes being involved that had become, you know, in a weird way canon, because Marvel Comics multiple multiverses are all canon. And it was done, you know, very much with much more polish. That I do know. With this upcoming 2025 Secret Wars, which again, that's landing on the anniversary, it feels like they're borrowing from both. It feels like, based on what we've heard, Feige is probably going to take the concept of the Beyonder and the way he's been building up Kang, but I feel like they're also going to do what Hickman did, which is kind of the payoff to all these storylines that are being built up in Phase 4 and Phase 5, I think are going to end with Secret Wars, and I think when we get to Phase 6, that's when the next sort of big Marvel arc will begin. Or Secret Wars could be the beginning of, like, sort of like a transitional film, like what Civil War was, where it's like the beginning of a new era of Marvel. Because remember, we haven't even gotten the other movies for Phase 6 or Phase 5 or Phase 6, so we don't know what's really coming after that. But it feels like this could be the payoff of the No Way Home stuff that was teased, the stuff from Loki Season 1. You know, I think that Secret Wars is the place to kind of blow off all these storylines.
Yeah, I think that this is, you know, the big payoff for the multiverse saga, in that we're going to see all of the different multiversal characters, the variants, things like that, the Spider-Men, all coalesce in this one story and collide. And, you know, it's kind of like what the Avengers did in 2012, where it was the first time you're seeing all these superheroes cross over into one film and share a continuity. This is like the next, you know, way to go to the next level with that, where it's we're seeing all these multiverse of characters finally be able to interact where they were kind of subdivided previously. Although with the multiverse saga, we'll probably see a lot of them interact before that. But, you know, we'll get to see them all in their totality used to their fullest extent, and in Battle World, see how they play off each other and stuff.
Because, like, you had Avengers 2012, and then you had Endgame, which is like Avengers 2012 on steroids. You saw everything from Phase 3 come together in Endgame. But now, with this one, it's not only going to tie in the Sam Raimi universe because of the rumor of the Spider-Man being there, you know, Tobey and Andrew and them, you know, in those universes, but it might also have some of the Fox X-Men. I mean, again, the sky's the limit here. It could literally be the culmination of not just the MCU, but literally decades of Marvel films going all the way back to the year 2000 when X-Men came out. So, you know, I like that idea a lot, but it could also be the debut of Galactus. It could be the debut of new characters that we've heard of. That, I mean, obviously we know the character, but I mean, we've heard of as in, like, in the MCU. They haven't shown him yet, but even if you've never read a Fantastic Four book, you know who Galactus is. He's somewhat popular. Maybe not as much as Thanos, but he's pretty well known. My question to you is, you know, do you really think that they can fit the entire Secret Wars battle in one movie? I mean, we assume it'll be 3 hours, right? But it's a lot of content. It's a lot of content.
It's a ton of content, and it's both Secret Wars series are long and involve a lot of machinations between the characters. There's a lot of world building. There's a lot of examination of what it means to play God in the 2015 one, and what it means to show weakness when you're playing God, and what the implications on your kind of, you know, your the people that you lord over once they see that weakness, how they respond to that, the dissent that foments. So I don't think they'll have time to get to all the subtleties of that. There's a ton of characters that are not established in the MCU that are, you know, factor in heavily to those stories. So I think that it'll have to be a truncated version of the story, which is why when you say which one is it going to look more like, is it going to be like 1984, is it going to be a 2015? I think that
they'll take aspects of both, but go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think they'll take aspects of both. I think that my initial thing was, I think that it's going to mirror more the 2015 one, because Jonathan Hickman just writes to such a cinematic way that, you know, it's easy to adapt, and they've shown that they like adapting his work before.
Do you think he'll be a producer on this thing?
I mean, he could be. He'll certainly be a writer and a supervisor of the storyline, for sure. Absolutely, he'll contribute in that capacity, I think. But you know, thinking about the time constraints that they have, maybe they will condense it down to something more simple, like the 1984 story, something more straightforward, where you're just seeing a lot of characters interact with each other. to achieve a little bit more of a simple goal. There's a lot of continuity and build-up that went into the 2015 version that was all paid off in that story very satisfyingly. But of course, it took Jonathan Hickman is a long-form storyteller. He really lays plots out over story arcs and story arcs that build on each other and then collide in very satisfying ways at the end. But but that is kind of what these movies are. I mean, I think that this will be a capstone movie that pays off. I mean, this is 2025 we're talking, so there's a lot of unannounced projects, and we haven't even seen this Phase 6 for these movies, they said, and Phase 5 is going to serve to set that up. So I think there will be a lot of continuity that goes into this. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness sets up for the first time incursions, and those are the driving force behind the 2015 plotline. It's that Secret Wars is when the final two universes in Marvel collide. That's the Ultimate Universe and the 616. And what happens is the result is they all, the heroes fight, and we get to see them all reassembled on Battleworld. Now, Kevin Feige has said that in this post-Infinity War landscape, post-Endgame landscape, Doctor Strange is kind of the new Iron Man. He's the primary, he's the front and center hero that will be the driving force behind this. So with him causing the incursions and those seeming to lead to a larger problem, I think that we will see them become more and more of a threat in his movies and perhaps in the background of other projects as we build towards Secret Wars. Probably be the catalyst for that.
Right. Now,
that or Kang. Kang will also feature him, but we can get to that. I have kind of anyway. I have a format that I think breaks it down pretty logically, but
I want to get to that. I do want to get to what you're talking about because I can see that because Strange is in a lot of projects, and I feel like Wanda will be a major force in this. Obviously, the Spider-Men. I'm not sure about like Falcon and Bucky and them. I mean, they might be in it, but I don't know if they'll be major players. But Doctor Doom should be a major player, and of course, on the other side we have Kang. Now, I feel like the Kang Dynasty film. There's a possibility that the Kang Dynasty film that comes out before Secret Wars is going to be the end of Kang. They're going to beat Kang in that movie, and it leads into Secret Wars. Or what they could actually do is the Kang Dynasty film could be the beginning of the Secret Wars. Like that could actually be the build up to Secret Wars, kind of like how Infinity War. In a way, Infinity War. A synonym for that film would be Thanos' Quest. That's really what it was. And then Endgame was more. I mean, it wasn't really the Infinity Gauntlet, but it was more like the second half, the part 2 of it. So, so as far as the MCU goes, we are missing some people. The original Captain America and Iron Man are not going to be here. They can always bring in variants. I mean, for all we know, Robert Downey might come back as a variant. Well, we don't know. He said he wasn't going to, but we don't know. Fitting everything together, though, okay, do you think we're going to see the Beyonder or the Beyonders? And, like, how do you think they're going to do the MCU version? They could do either one.
Right. So I was thinking, actually, once I was thinking about this video, I thought, is there a chance that they don't do the Beyonder?
That's a chance, too. It's Kang instead, maybe.
The Kang and Doom thing, and because beyond this, they like to have these climactic movies be a payoff of a long-running villain, usually something that they've set up.
Like
and the
Kang.
Beyonder, like Kang, exactly, like Kang or Doom. And so the Beyonder is typically a character that's introduced right. It debuts in Secret Wars #1, 1984.
Right.
He's not
out of nowhere.
He's kind of a mad cosmic being who's trying to just entertain himself by playing with these heroes and seeing them interact like they're action figures. He literally plays with them like they're action figures on one of the covers.
I remember that.
But so or they're going to go with the Beyonders, which is a force, a faction that they could build up and allude to over the course of Phase 5 and 6, and do that. And also, it would also again fall on the spectrum of, is it going to be 1984 or is it going to be 2015? I could see the Beyonder or the Beyonders being the primary antagonist of Secret Wars until, for the first 2 acts, until Doom usurps their power and becomes the final villain of the story, and they defeat him in the 3rd act. Or I could see the Beyonders getting snuffed out immediately, or at the end of Kang Dynasty, and then Doom being the primary villain that lords over the whole storyline for Secret Wars. In which case, it would much more greatly resemble 2015 version. So yeah, it's a question of, do they want to debut a new villain and have him be dispatched quickly, or do they want to just keep it the villains that are the big payoff? That people have been waiting and waiting to see, come to fruition.
Well, I'm gonna put you on this. I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. So, your prediction here: do you think Secret Wars, the film, is going to close the multiversal storyline? In other words, what I mean by that is this going to lead to the Raimi-verse and the Fox X-Men universe and whatever else they have going on being officially deleted from canon, or the opposite effect where this is actually how the X-Men become, like even the Hugh Jackman X-Men, like that cast actually get brought into the MCU for their own titles? Because the second one makes more business sense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the first one. I think that this will be the condensation of all the characters into one Marvel slate. I think we'll probably stop seeing as many cameos after this, just because the gimmick will have probably run its course by the time we reach this film. But
Hayden, do not forget, this is coming out in Phase 5, and the Multiverse Saga is supposedly Phase 4, 5, and 6. Now, again, this could change, but if this is coming out in Phase 5 and not Phase 6... Or actually, no, is this Phase 6? It is Phase 6, right? It's
Phase 6, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so okay. I'm sorry then, but we don't know if it's the last movie in Phase 6. So yeah, I take back what I said. But Phase 7 could be like the X-Men, like maybe not the Fox X-Men, but the actual reboot of the X-Men with new actors, which I think might not go over well with some people.
Here's the intel that I've heard. I've heard that the Fox X-Men all have contracts up to 2025 that they had signed initially before the merger, and that they are still owed royalties and payments on those characters up to 2025. Mm-hmm. So that is probably likely when we'll see the new Marvel X-Men debut in the MCU, but the characters that have previously played those roles can still play those characters. That's why we see Patrick Stewart as Professor X.
Right, yeah, not just that, but even in the X-Men universe, we have James McAvoy as the young Professor X and Patrick Stewart as the old one.
Right. So that's why we've seen kind of the older actors reprise their roles right now, because we still pay, they're still getting, we don't have to split the funds up to pay both people, we can just pay them. But it's not looking likely that we will see a new X-Men cast with your Cyclops, your Wolverines, your Storms, and Jean Greys until about 2025. So that means... That's a huge variable. Are they going to be in Secret Wars? They're a huge part of the Secret Wars story in the 1984 one.
Right.
The 2021 not so much, because that was when Marvel was playing hardball with Fox to get the license back, so they weren't featuring the X-Men or the Fantastic Four in like any of their comics, and it was a really dark time for fans of those series.
I remember that.
In 2015, Hickman Secret Wars a little bit. He gets offed pretty early by Doctor Doom, but he has the Phoenix Force. Yeah, so they're a big part of 1984 Secret Wars. I mean, they're their own faction of the three groups. So yeah, that is.
That'd be awesome. I mean,
will they be in this or will they not be? My gut is telling me that no, the X-Men won't really be in Secret Wars.
See, I don't know. I feel like, honestly, Secret Wars could end up being the payoff. Like, I think people want Avengers versus X-Men, and I think the only way we're going to see it is in Secret Wars. I think that what they could do is bring along some of the Fox X-Men actors, have them play the X-Men faction in Secret Wars, right? And then perhaps something happens to Wanda, like we discussed, that she ends up creating mutation in the main MCU timeline after seeing them in Secret Wars. Or maybe she runs into a variant of herself who is Magneto's daughter. And then that could lead somewhere. Like, there's a lot. They could play with a lot of things here.
They've been teasing these breadcrumbs for the mutants for so goddamn long now. Like, the past, 3 years. Or, since WandaVision, the WandaVision thing.
The boner.
Right, exactly. Like, the boner guy, yeah, exactly.
Ralph Bonner, yeah.
They've now been kind of stringing us along for a long time now, so I feel like they got to get to it. But
I think this could be the payoff for the Fox X-Men. Like, we're going to see him here, and that's it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but yeah, maybe here. That's it, and see how they have the Avengers vs. X-Men kind of mini event within Secret Wars.
Yeah.
But
so you said you had a list of what they like. Let's get to that.
Down and so I've got a list of things I think they need to see in the movie to have it look and feel like Secret Wars. You know, wouldn't be Secret Wars without these elements. And then I think I've got a secondary list of variables that may or may not be in the story that would enhance it, but who knows if they're going to be able to do them or how they change them or adapt them to fit the MCU mold a little bit better. So here's what I think is the pillars of the story that you have to hit. First off, it's got to be Doctor Doom. I mean,
Yeah, he should be the winner. He should be the winner, you're saying.
He should be the winner. It's looking like maybe Kang is the one that they seed before that, and maybe he's the payoff, but I think you got to have Doom, otherwise it's not going to be Secret Wars.
And actually, I feel like Doom should maybe even if he gets beat, he should survive it, because I like the idea of Doom being a villain like indefinitely, who they beat, but he doesn't die. Like, he slithers out of it, you know what I mean? Whereas Kang, they could beat him, but guess what? There's another Kang. See, I like the idea of, because, you know, one of the complaints of the first couple phases is that they killed off too many villains, and I get that. A lot of villains did die, you know, and I feel like in this case, they could be clever about it and say, okay, yeah, you did kill Kang, but what about this Kang? What about that Kang? Same thing with Doctor Doom. They almost got him, but he slithers away and he escapes.
That is definitely the appeal of Doom. He's impossible to stamp out. He's so powerful, and he retreats to Latveria, where he has a giant stronghold of Doombots, and you know, he can always kind of come back one step ahead again.
Right.
So yeah, I think he's got to be in it. It's, whether he's God Emperor Doom or you know, a character that is just a villain in it, he's definitely got to be the winner by the end over the Beyonder, and then take on the good guys. That's consistent with all versions of Secret Wars.
Okay.
Now, the next on my list, the Beyonder, we touched on that. I think that I'm kind of 50-50 on whether the Beyonder is even part of it, or whether it's just, or maybe the Beyonder is a character that in Kang Dynasty they attract the attention of because the time stream is getting so messed up.
You're right.
And Kang is, you know, I think by the end of Kang Dynasty, time itself will be obliterated, and that is what recoalesces into Battle World. I think that the time stream will just be existing in fragments, and Doom or someone will harness the power of the Beyonders to, you know, salvage all of creation into one amalgam world and then lord over it like a god. That could be Kang, but
that would be huge to see in theaters, bro. That's huge. Yeah,
it's
you know what I mean?
It's going to be amazing. So that's, I think, the Beyonder is probably going to be in it in some capacity, but maybe it's just Kang and he's the one that causes the destruction, and then Doom or someone, or maybe the Beyonder is the one that saves all of creation from the end of Kang Dynasty and is set up as the antagonist for the first part of Secret Wars going into before Doom, you know, usurps the power. I could see that happening as the Beyonder being the one that salvages what's left of the time stream into Battle World, and then and they'll probably not call it Battle World because that's a little bit of a cheesy name, but something like that.
It's cheesy, but it's also kind of cool. You know what I mean?
Cool.
It's total 80s. It's total 80s Saturday morning cartoon, but a part of me is kind of like, you know, I don't know, or maybe they could call it something else, and then they could have a little joke where Peter Parker's like, sounds like some kind of Battle World, you know, some stupid like that.
They love doing it like that, having like a little one-off thing that the characters say.
Marvel humor.
Yeah, Marvel humor, exactly. Some lighthearted moment within all the darkness. Okay, so that's one part of it. The next is you got to have a crew of heroes and a crew of villains that hang out together and butt heads with each other and also clash with the other group.
Right. Multiple groups
navigating Battle World and playing off characters that you've never seen interact before. Some of them changing sides, some of them, you know, betraying the other and playing them against each other. But that's definitely essential. Now, will we have a third group, the X-Men? Because they're their own faction in...
Well, you could have the X-Men, and then you could have the X-Men villains be their own faction, for all we know. You know,
right? I think Magneto,
he could flip sides.
Right, he does flip sides. He goes from the villains to the X-Men in the original story. I hope
which he's done a billion times. Right. Man, he just flip sides so many damn times, bro.
I know. He's basically like a good guy now or an anti-hero, which that's a different conversation. Because so many villains, popular villains, end up as anti-heroes eventually.
Now, what about the various Thors? They kind of already did it in Love and Thunder.
Right. Yeah, that's one of my variables, I think. That's depending on how much it resembles the 2015 comic. But I think that's such a cool concept. And they have Thor variants. They have the Mighty Thor. They got...
Well, she died.
Beta Ray Bill. She does die. But in Battle World, you know, people come back and shit. It's like, you know, the God rules kind of override some things.
Now, how do you feel about Peter Parker from the MCU, Tom Holland finding the black symbiote? Like, obviously they changed it because of the post-credit scene or the mid-credit scene in Spider-Man No Way Home, but a lot of people have already been theorizing that if they do Secret Wars, that even if Toby and Andrew die, that Tom Holland will find the black costume and we have the black costume saga again. I'm very iffy on that because
Sony owns Venom. So it's unless they give their it's got to tie into the Venom movies in some way, or be a new Venom for the 616. But I don't know if Sony would really want that because it would immediately probably draw attention away from their Tom Hardy franchise.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's a political situation.
I know it is. There's a lot of red tape involved with whether he'll get I mean, he might just get a black suit, and that's just a fan service nod. The MCU has shown that they're not afraid to just lightly reference things now. It reference, callbacks now that aren't ever given the true payoff, like the boner, silver guy.
Right.
So the next on my list of things that you must see is Owen Reese, the Molecule Man. He's got to be involved in the story as
super powerful.
Powder. He's the one that really houses the Beyonders' power and acts as kind of a battery for Doctor Doom. And he has to be set up in some sort of way because he's just classic to the story. He's, again, consistent in all versions. Now, my question was, we've heard through leaks that there might be a Doom solo movie, and he might be developed as a character in the MCU separately from the Fantastic Four, just to be kind of a general villain who they do, interact, and who probably arch nemesis the Fantastic Four more than the other groups. But I think his range will extend, into conflicts with Wakanda, the Black Panther characters, things like that, Namor. So, if that's the case, will he be the villain of the Fantastic Four movie that takes place right before Kang Dynasty? I could see that being him being the central antagonist of that, or possibly Galactus, because Galactus is again in Secret Wars. But he has to be set up in some way.
What about the possibility of Loki from the Loki series reuniting with Thor in the movie? That could be something right there. It'd be a moment.
That's some of that fan service that Secret Wars is all about. I mean, it's just, you get to see the payoffs of storylines that have been simmering for a long time.
I also feel like Captain Marvel will be involved without question. Have a strong feeling
Monica
about that.
Rambeau, Captain Marvel, is in the original one. She's a big character in the 1984 one. So theoretically, she'll be set up by that point to be a major character. I mean, we saw her in WandaVision. So yeah, I think she'll probably factor in. And the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel is a big factor in. Well, she's not hugely important to the story, but she is one of the crew of heroes in the 2015 Hickman version. Of course, that's because they were really trying to push her character at the time.
Right.
So,
and She-Hulk was also in the 84 one. She's about to start her show.
She is in the 84 ones. Her and regular Hulk are both in it, so she'll probably be in it. They'll probably fill out the cast of characters with Avengers that have, inherited the mantle more recently, and
like Shang-Chi.
Like Shang-Chi, yeah, it's definitely gonna kind of resemble the new Phase 4, 5, 6 Marvel landscape. But I think on that token, we will possibly see one of the OG Avengers come back just for the movie. I think there's a good chance that we could see, because it's such a huge long-running payoff, we could see a Cap come back, or
Chris Evans.
Tony Stark, Chris Evans cameo, or a Tony Stark cameo.
What about Deadpool?
Deadpool would be epic in this. I don't know if he's in any of the Secret Wars, but he would be great. I feel like they could use him. They could use characters like Colossus, who's just a CGI, X-Men in those movies.
Wasn't there a comic where Deadpool was in Secret Wars? I feel like that. I could be wrong, but I feel like that did happen. But I could be wrong on that.
There are so many What If Deadpool comics. It's a very popular What If character. So, I mean, most likely there is a What If Deadpool is in Secret Wars, because there's a What If Deadpool did pretty much everything comic.
Right.
He's just popular for that format. He works really well as a character for that. But yeah, so that is, I think, the extent of what we can guarantee is in the movie. Now, what we don't know is, are the X-Men going to be in it? We covered that. Will it resemble 1984 or 2015? I'm leaning towards it's going to look and feel more like the 2015 with things in place, references to reference and call back to 1984 story, because it's so simple that I don't think you could carry it into a modern 2020s movie narrative. It's more of a look at these action figure heroes clash and how they kind of play off each other in a less subtle and deep way than the 2015 story handles it. But anyway, Number three is, I think, is the Fantastic Four going to factor into this movie very heavily, because their movie debuts right before Kang Dynasty. So they're not going to have a lot of time to exist in the MCU and be built up as important characters. However, Reed Richards is hugely important to the resolution of both movies.
Yes. Yeah.
And
he's coming.
Battle of wits and his battle of his, ego showdown with Doctor Doom is kind of what gets Doctor Doom to capitulate and admit defeat, and then Owen Reese to cede his power over to Reed Richards and give him the power of the Beyonders. This is the 2015 one. And to remake the Marvel Universe in a better way than Doom did after the resolution of Secret Wars. So it's tough to imagine Secret Wars without them factoring in heavily, but this is the MCU. They love to do things differently. And I could see them retooling the story to fit, Doctor Strange, for example. I could easily see Doctor Strange being the kind of most important character in.
He could be the Reed Richards of the story, possibly.
He could be the Reed Richards because he's kind of the one that started it all. He's the one responsible for causing the incursions. He's also the kind of he's the Avenger left with the most clout in the MCU from the original lineup. They're not there anymore.
I also feel like he might die in this one.
And he could definitely possibly die, because that's a long time for him to be playing that character at that point. And all these guys are looking for their exit. They don't want to be signed on for an unlimited number of films, although I wish they would.
Well, their bank accounts must say otherwise, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. I mean, they command huge paychecks for these. So I think there's a very good chance that he is the, front man of this movie and sees his resolution of his multi-film character arc in this. The next on my list here it's the multiverse saga. So there has to be, some parallel worlds that hold some weight into the story other than just briefly visited in movies and they travel through and nothing comes of it. And we see a little bit of each one, like in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
My question is, are we going to get like a primary parallel universe with other heroes that we see collide in the final incursion before Battle World? Will we? Because it's tough to know. Is the timeline going to get blown up and recoalesced into Battleworld?
That's what I'm wondering about.
Or are the incursions that they reference in Multiverse of Madness, the two Earths colliding, which is really amazing that they reference that, because that implies so much about the future of the MCU. I mean, you can really tell a lot of the roadmap just by the fact that incursions are now introduced in the plot. Are they going to be like a parallel worlds colliding thing? Is it timeline related, or is it multiverse popping related? We'll see. But if that's the case, the big payoff of that whole story with the incursions in the comics was that the final universe to collide with the 616 was the Ultimate Marvel Universe.
Yeah. So does that movie might see Miles Morales in this?
Right. Well, that's my next question here. Are we going to get Miles Morales? He's huge in the story. He's one of the ones that talks to Owen Reese and convinces him that the good guys our intentions are pure.
It could be, or maybe that's Tobey. Maybe Tobey Maguire Spider-Man does it in this version.
Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland, because Tom Holland's that baby face, kind of like good-natured. He really, his intent comes across pure in everything he does. So I could easily see that. But if they do introduce the Ultimate Universe, man, in the comics, it is such an epic showdown. That's how Secret Wars 1 opens up, is like the final incursion, and you see all the characters literally in the incursion point between the two Earths. They're flying between the two and attacking each other. Colossus does a fastball special where he throws the Hulk over to the other Earth, and like all the rest of the Hulks jump, do their giant like super long jump over to the other Earth and team up and flip the Triskelion, the SHIELD headquarters, just like reach underneath it and completely flip it over. So the Ultimate Universe gets decimated by the 616 universe, but until the tides turn in the Ultimate Universe's favor with the arrival of Ultimate Reed Richards, who is the Maker, who's another secondary villain in the 2015 version, but a very important villain, and is there right at the end of the story, right up until the final resolution between Doom and Reed Richards. But he unleashes his Children of Tomorrow, and you get to see the tides turn in the Ultimate Universe's favor. Anyway, this is not super relevant to the movies we're talking about, but what it's meant to reflect is that it's cool to think of there being another alternate universe that we get invested in, that we get to see collide in a kind of a tragic way with the main MCU. So if we are seeing that, are we going to see Miles Morales? Are we going to see Ultimate Reed Richards?
The Fox X-Men universe could be that universe.
That would be awesome. If they're the final incursion, that would make so much sense.
That's what I'm saying. That would be how they close out the Fox universe. Right, you know what I mean?
Right. That would be that would put a bow on it, really.
Yeah. And that way it satisfies people who watch those movies.
It would be a huge fan service thing, and it would bring in so much cash if that was the final, swan song, final nail in the coffin for those characters, where they, not nail in the coffin, but final swan song for them, where they reprise their roles in Secret Wars, and we get to see them just as a full X-Men squad play off of the MCU characters. It would be really cool to see and pretty surreal. But yeah, so I would like to see an alternate universe, kind of like the Ultimate one, but it would be great if that was the X-Men one. That's a genius idea, to not have to build them up, but already rely on prior investment from the fans to know who these characters are.
And that's going to get a major pop in the movie theater.
Major pop, exactly. That's a much simpler way to put it. So yeah, and then you got the fun elements of Battle World. We got the Thor Corps. You've got the Marvel Zombies world as one of the big factions.
And they've introduced that in What If.
Right, and could we see the return of Ultron here?
I was going to ask you about Ultron.
Right. Next, there's an Ultron Horde. There's like an Age of Ultron kind of part of Battleworld in the Hickman version. But in the 84 version, he's constantly harassing the heroes because he gets reprogrammed by Doom, and he gets revived, and he's just flying around menacing the heroes the whole time as like this constant threat. His constant presence in that original story. So it'd be great to see him come back, and this is where you start to think, how long is this movie going to be?
I know, man. They would really have to build it up well in other movies, to have the other movies take a piece of the story little by little, and then have Secret Wars be the actual battle royale. You know what I mean?
Agreed. That would have to be the way it goes, because there's just too much to fit in one movie. Unless
they flip it on us and say Secret Wars Part 1 and Part 2, they could do that.
They could. It's so far away that they could do an Infinity War thing where it was a Part 1 and Part 2, or, that one they just changed the titles, but they could decide to make it a two-parter, which it seems like would work, but it seems like they're trying to buck that trend, because when they announced Phase 3 and the Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, that was in that era of movies where it was very trendy to have the capstone movie or saga be a two-parter.
Yeah, like Harry Potter did it, and
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Yep.
So I think they're trying to.
And even that Twilight. I think Twilight did it too, right? Part 1 and Part 2.
Yeah, Part 1 and Part 2. It gave that epic feel, and it does allow you to tell the story in an expanded way that doesn't get rushed. But I think they started to see a trend in like diminishing returns, because other than Endgame, a lot of those Part 2s didn't make as much money as the Part 1. The Divergent series and shit tried to do it, and I don't think they even finished that series because the interest was waning by the time Part 2 came. But so I could see, this is them trying to buck that formula by doing like two independently important movies like Infinity War, like Endgame, where you don't feel that Part 1 and Part 2 tied to the previous movie type thing. But it just seems so crazy that they're doing them back to back. They're doing one in the summer season and one in the holiday movie season.
That's smart though. Business. I mean, they could put it out any point in the year. It'll make money. The MCU's too hot right now.
Right. But they're doing it that way, which is cool for me as a fan. Like, I'm really excited that we get it in short order. We don't have to wait, 2 years or whatever, or a full year to see the payoff of the story. But Kang Dynasty is a real question mark here, because we talked a bit about it on the prior one, the Road to Secret Wars podcast, but that will probably I could see Kang Dynasty taking a lot of elements from Secret Wars, but setting up some of these payoffs and these fan service moments before, things that debuted in Secret Wars, maybe having some of them happen in Kang Dynasty, because that's what I was thinking. It's going to be a variant heavy movie, I think, because that's, so much to do with his storyline. And, that could even be where we see some of the Tobey Maguires and things like that. But that is, that's TBD as we see more movies fill in the slate. There's so little known about that this could, once we see what movies are announced in Phase 6, which could be, that could be spoilery. That's just why they didn't announce anything but the Avengers ones. The titles could reveal some of the fate of characters in Phase 5 and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough to imagine this not being a two-parter. There's just so much. So it's going to be a long one, I think, at the very least, but a good one. I'm excited for Kang Dynasty too. It's almost like that's being overshadowed immediately by the announcement of Secret Wars. But I do love Kang. I think he is in the original Secret Wars story too, as one of the villains there. But I think he'll probably be dealt with by the time we get there.
He's either going to be a major villain or be dealt with beforehand. I was thinking either one, yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, I
And like
mean,
we talked about, maybe Kang Dynasty is when it's what lets the Beyonders, like it basically awakens the Beyonder. Okay, what's going on here? Like, why is the time stream all jacked up? And then they
right.
figure out that what Kang's been doing. But also, what I like about this is, and this is pretty clever. Yes, Kang did do wrong, right? Obviously, he's the villain, but really the Avengers using time travel in Endgame is what really kicked all of this off. And so it's almost like the consequences for them saving, the universe and saving and using the Infinity Stones to bring everybody back. The consequences that branched off of that could lead to this.
Right. I think with the way Marvel likes to make everything matter and lead into the next one, that's kind of where my gut's going right now, is that is, how it gets saved. I wonder where Scarlet Witch and her chaos magic as being this reality warping force factor into this. I think she could be part of the resolution to it all, honestly. I think that she's so powerful, and she has such a high power ceiling, almost infinite on her magic, that
Owen Reese also.
And so does Owen Reese. I could see her.
Franklin Richards. They could introduce Franklin Richards.
Franklin Richards. I hope he's in it because he's in the 2015 version. Him and Valeria are two of the ones that end up figuring out that Doom killed Dr. Stephen Strange, his assistant, and seeing that they start kind of plotting against him because they start to poke holes in him, in his godhood.
Right.
But again, so much. I want Fantastic Four to factor into this movie. I really do. They're so important to the plot of both of them, especially the 2015 one, but it's tough to envision them mattering all that much when you have all these characters that have been building up for so long, and then the Fantastic Four movie comes out right before Secret Wars. The fact that they were willing to push the movie back that far when John Watts dropped out of the project kind of makes me feel like maybe they were never destined to be so important, because if you had to have them as a pivotal moment in Secret, or a pivotal character, important characters in Secret Wars, you would have to set them up well in advance, and the fact they were willing to push the movie, much closer to Secret Wars makes me feel like they weren't that much of a factor in it anyways. Because
well, they did already introduce Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange, so that was kind of the slow build to something bigger later.
Right. I don't think that John Krasinski is going to reprise his role as Mr. Fantastic.
That's too bad because he's awesome.
He is awesome, and he's the dream casting that all the fans had. Now, that was a lot to do with his wife being Susan, Susan Storm, being Invisible Woman.
Yeah, she looks. They look like they're supposed to look. They're perfect for this. Exactly. Like, have you seen A Quiet Place, right?
I have, yes.
Like, he's a great director. I would love it if he directed and starred in Fantastic Four.
Right. Do they have a new director for that? Because if not, they should really court him. I would be willing to bet that he doesn't want to do a Marvel movie because of just the heavy creative control that they exert over the directors.
Yeah, but it's also big for his career and maybe for his kids.
I mean, look what they did with Taika. It broke him into the mainstream in the U.S. with Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
And it really...
Well, no, it was a Ragnarok.
I mean, Ragnarok, yeah. And then Jojo Rabbit came on the heels of that. But... a really well-executed MCU movie can put a director on the map, and he is already on the map. I mean, people love A Quiet Place, but this could show his range. He could have a lot of creative control over his character. He could really make it his own and have it, a lot like how he wants to look. So it's 50-50 with them and the X-Men for me. I could easily see the MCU going just like full Avengers on this. And just having it be like your Sam Wilsons, your Carol Danverses, your Ironhearts.
I could see that.
The people that they've spent time setting up as just the ones that matter.
This could actually be where they finally kill off Nick Fury.
Right. The end has to be coming somewhat soon because Samuel Jackson.
He's in all 6 phases, brother. Right, all 6.
He's also stated he loves being Nick Fury.
He loves acting because he does a bunch of movies a year.
He does. He doesn't reject any scripts, it seems. He doesn't turn down a project. But I recently saw a quote from him that was like, you guys can shoot for your awards every year and do all that, but I really just like playing Nick Fury. So I'm going to do that because that's what brings me the most joy. So pretty cool of him to admit that's where his priorities are, because it's just such a cool thing. I mean, he gets so much love from the fans. He's been so pivotal in establishing the MCU literally from Iron Man. He appears at the end. And so, yeah, I think, if he doesn't meet his demise in Secret Invasion, that is, I could see that being, because that's like a real Nick Fury centric story from what I've seen on Disney Plus. I don't know. He might not die in any of them, but yeah, it could be the payoff to the story. It could be the payoff for a lot of them. In fact, that begs the question of, with the villain team that is going to have to assemble, who is going to comprise that when the MCU basically has killed off?
I know. It would be an opportunity to bring back guys like Killmonger, a variant, because, he's a great actor. They could bring back Thanos again. They could bring them back because there's different universes. They can do whatever they want. They're dead, but they have other... Oh, wait, we got to fight this guy again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And, of course, Kang, if he's there.
Right, if Kang's still around, he could be the one that assembles the team, because he's done that where he'll assemble from different points of the time
From different timeline, yeah. And then Magneto, and then he switches over to the X-Men side. There's a lot. They could do a lot, bro. They when you really think about it, like, when they bought Fox... Yeah, when they bought Fox, that was like it. You know what I mean? Like, the only thing left... I mean, Sony will participate. I mean, for all we know, they could even... I don't think they're going to bring back, like, Green Goblin. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. Right. I don't. But they could bring back what they're setting up in the Sonyverse, which is like Vulture, like, because they're kind of moving stuff around. For all we know, we might see them come back if Sony will be okay with it. Like, there's a lot they can do. I do think Spider-Man needs to be in the story, though. That I do think.
I think so, too. I think because both versions have a central role for Spider-Man. He's important in both. And the second one is more Miles Morales, or in Secret Wars Hickman version.
Right.
But... I think, we could see Doc Ock return. He's as a character. I mean, it's tough because they all came back for the big cameo in Far From Home, but that will have been quite a long time.
Well, that wasn't a cameo. They were the actual villains, but they
were the villains. But Doc Ock is in the storyline of Secret Wars 1984.
Yeah, the original. Well, they closed off that story, though, because they all turned good at the end. You know what I mean?
They did. So it's unlikely we'll see a ton of Spider-Man villains probably appear, although they could set up... they could do Venom, as one of the villain crew. He could be placed on. He's definitely an anti-hero in the Sonyverse.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Those villains that they haven't quite resolved their storyline, that they're now trying to set up in the Morbius verse.
Right.
Or not the verse, at the post credits, Morbius, Vulture, and things like that. I think Ultron is likely to appear. I think that Owen Reese we know of, and they could probably pepper in some MCU villains that we aren't remembering that are still alive.
Baron Zemo, maybe.
Oh, yes. Well, we got all those Thunderbolts characters that could appear in it. But it's kind of an all-star lineup of villains in Secret Wars. You've got Galactus, you've got Doc Ock, you've also got some minor villains. You've got, like, Crusher Creel and Absorbing Man and things like that.
Ulysses Claw, I think, was in the original one, but he's dead.
He's dead. So I really feel like they should go God mode and resurrect some villains, or have them from alternate universes where they're still alive.
Yeah, that's probably they have to. They have to. They have to for at least a couple of them.
Right.
But if you if you have an Ultron army, then that would basically make it so you don't have to bring back that many villains, because then you have disposable Ultron units they can destroy. So you don't have to have like 50 villains. You can have 8 and the Ultrons.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, we're going to wrap it up, man. Let us know in the comments what you think about all of this big Secret Wars conversation and what you want to see. Thanks again for being here, bro.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon.